All right, let's try a little thought experiment. For just a second, I want you to imagine a totally different reality for yourself.
Imagine you have everything. Any resource, any luxury, any comfort you can think of, it's just yours. Instantly. No questions asked. And it's not just stuff. You command the largest army on the planet. Every single decision you make becomes the law of the land. Every person you meet literally bows to you. By any definition, you are the most powerful person alive. Now, let me ask you, and be really honest with yourself here. After years of that kind of authority, that kind of validation, would you still be you? Would you stay grounded? Would you still be a good person? Because, history's answer to that question is pretty clear, and it's almost always a big no. Power corrupts. We've all heard it, right? Authority just inflates the ego. The person who gets to the top is rarely the same one who started the journey. But notice that word I just used. Almost. Because that one exception, it's one of the most remarkable stories in the entire history of leadership.
So, you've got this one guy, a man who held more power than maybe anyone ever, and somehow, against all odds, he just didn't break. He defied that iron rule. His name was Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome. And the most incredible thing about him isn't what he did, but who he remained while doing it. So, how'd he do it? How did he avoid that trap that gets pretty much everyone else? Well, he had a tool, a kind of secret weapon, a defense system for his own character. And that weapon wasn't his title or his intellect. It was philosophy, specifically Stoic philosophy. And look, this wasn't some stuffy academic hobby for him. Starting from the time he was 12 years old, this was a daily practice, a set of tools he used not to look smart, but for his own survival, to stay the person he wanted to be. And at the very core of that practice is a word we all think we know, but the Stoics saw it in a completely different light. That word is humility. See, for the Stoics, humility wasn't about thinking less of yourself. Not at all. It was about seeing yourself with perfect, brutal accuracy. No ego inflation, but also no fake modesty. It was just the plain, unvarnished truth of who you are. And this was his whole focus. He's basically saying, hey, all this outside stuff, the empire, the title, that's not really in my control. He knew the only thing that was truly his, the only thing really worth mastering, was his own character. But this wasn't just some nice idea he thought about once in a while. No way. This was a daily grind, a real conscious effort he had to make every single day. And we know this because we have the proof. We have his private journal, what we now call the Meditations. You gotta understand, this was not a book he was writing for us. It's raw, it's repetitive, it's basically him talking to himself, reminding himself day in and day out to stick to his principles. One of the coolest exercises he did is something called the view from above. He would literally just zoom out in his own mind. He'd picture all the empires that have risen and fallen, all the powerful people who are now just dust. And from that huge cosmic perspective, well, his own life, his own problems, his own ego, it all kind of shrinks back down to its proper size, You know, the Meditations doesn't start with him bragging or laying out his own brilliant ideas. It starts with gratitude. The very first thing he does is list all the people who shaped him and what he learned from them. It's like a careful accounting of his debts. He credits his mother, his father, his teachers. Think about it. This is the complete psychological opposite of that self-made myth that power loves to create. He actively chose to remember that he was the product of other people's wisdom. And get this is amazing. His most important teacher, the one he leaned on the most, a guy named Epictetus, who was a former slave. Just let that sink in for a second. The most powerful man on earth found his most essential guidance in the writings of a man from the absolute opposite end of the social ladder. And for Marcus, this wasn't ironic. It was clarifying. It proved that wisdom and virtue have absolutely nothing to do with your social status. Okay, so all of this private, internal work he was doing, it had huge public consequences. It completely shaped the way he led. Just look at this stuff.
He hated people sucking up to him. He told his advisors he wanted the truth, not comfortable agreement. He was famously reluctant to execute his rivals, which for an emperor was, well, it was unheard of. He extended legal rights to slaves and was genuinely accessible to regular people because he actually believed they mattered. This, right here, was his whole philosophy in a nutshell. His private beliefs convinced him that your true character is revealed in how you treat people who have no power, no influence, and absolutely nothing to offer you in return. Even with his enemies, his goal wasn't just to dominate them, it was to maintain his own character. Instead of stooping to their level, he believed that preserving his own virtue was the ultimate victory. The best revenge was just not being like them. So in the end, his power, his empire, his fame, that's not what made Marcus Aurelius so special. It was the daily, quiet, unseen battle he fought inside himself against the corrupting pull of all that power. That fight, that was what mattered. And that, of course, brings the question right back to us. We might not be ruling an empire, but we all face our own pressures that can warp our character. So what's the private fight that you're in every day? What are you working so hard to protect inside yourself? That's the real question Marcus Aurelius leaves us with.